Hello everybody, hello beautiful people. I just got done from going to a funeral that happened on Saturday. I came back today like early in the morning and I had a couple of thoughts. I don't know, I wanted to possibly say on the camera. The person who passed away was my uncle. He passed away last week. I don't know, I think he passed away from natural causes because the thing is, he was like 92 years old, so yeah, I would expect him to pass away around that age range. But I'm not necessarily sure what he passed away from. I'm just going to assume to natural causes. In any case, so I had to drive back home on a Saturday, and there was a lot of family members that were gathered and stuff like that. And I had this fear that I would smell bad because the night before, I ate like 8 bowls of Cheerios, but it wasn't like the Honey Nut Cheerios, so it wasn't sweet. However, I accidentally bought all sweetened almond milk, and I wanted to finish it on the weekend. So I finished it on a Friday, but then I realized, oh shit, I gotta go to a funeral tomorrow. So now I'm like, oh fuck, now this like sugar that I've been consuming from the almond milk is probably gonna make me smell bad. And on that Saturday, I didn't try to exercise to sweat out the odor. That's the method I used to try to at least reduce the odor. So I had to get up on a Saturday, go to the funeral. It was obviously held in the church and shit like that. The family sat, all the family members sat in the front, 2 or 3 rows. I decided to sit all the way in the back to the right because I always hate when people sit behind me. So I was sitting all the way in the back to the right, even though I was technically part of the family. And despite that, I didn't really see, I thought I was gonna see reactions. I was bracing for reactions. I was bracing for people to rub their noses or do weird shit around me. That's indicative of I smell bad, but I didn't really see that, right? So that didn't happen, and then we had to go to, the funeral, not the funeral. Yeah, the funeral. I don't know, are they called funerals? The places where you have the tombstones, and see his casket getting laid into the ground. Cemetery. Oh my God, it's cemetery. I'm sorry, cemetery, and seeing his casket laid into the ground, and it was really hot outside. It was blazing hot. I had this fear that I'm gonna sweat and then smell bad because I have hyperhidrosis, meaning I sweat faster than others. It's a lot easier for me to sweat, and once I start sweating, I start getting worse reactions. So I had that fear. Luckily, I was in some shade and I was far away from the crowd. But like my sister's boyfriend wanted to talk to me for some reason, so that bothered the fuck out of me. That's besides the point. In any case, throughout my interactions from the church cemetery to the cemetery, it wasn't that bad. So it made me feel relieved. It made me think, okay, maybe that almond milk didn't really do anything. But later on, we went back to my grandmother's house because there's some type of food preparation, and Black people like to eat food on any type of event, whether it's funeral, any type of family gathering. They're gonna meet up and eat food. Okay, cool. So I stayed out there. I actually left to go. Well, that's besides the point. I actually went back to that family gathering, and I was trying to find any type of food that I can eat that's not gonna make me smell like shit. But unfortunately, they had all the different types of macaroni and cheeses. They had tons of pork and tons of turkey and tons of chicken and tons of chocolate cake and all this other sweet stuff. And I was like, oh shit. But they had like big bowl of just like lettuce. So I just put like lettuce and then a couple of like chicken in it, started to eat it. So the thing about family gatherings for me is I hate family gatherings. I hate being around people, even if they're family members, because despite them being my family, I don't think they're honest. about me smelling bad. I remember talking to a couple of people, to my family members, about possibly having odor, and they say they don't smell anything. But nonetheless, I can tell sometimes. And on this particular day, I went out to the patio because I didn't think there was going to be anybody there. And I just don't like being around people because I'm always get this anxiety, like, oh, do they smell me? I don't know, blah, blah, blah. So I went outside the patio. I sit on the patio. There's somebody there. It's I guess a family friend. It's like my mother's friend's son. So I don't know what to call him. I guess I'll just call him family friend. And we're talking a little bit. He's getting into technology. He's about to graduate college, and he's getting into tech. And then later on, one of my uncle comes into the patio, and then my second uncle comes into the patio. And I'm saying all this to say, we were having this conversation. They were asking me about how is it like living in a condo, et cetera, this condo right here. And yeah, we were just talking and stuff, and I started noticing that they would rub their nose every now and then. And then I thought to myself, oh, maybe it's nothing. But as I continue to have this conversation, I see them constantly rub their nose, like every 1 to 2 minutes they would this or like that. Even like the family friend or the guy, I don't want to say his name. Let's say his name is Michael. Michael sitting across from me, who's recently about to finish college, every now and then would rub his nose, even though he was further away from me. And once I started realizing, like, all three of them are like rubbing their nose or doing this or whatever, even though I'm like outside the patio and it wasn't that hot, my back was sweating a little bit because it was sort of, I don't know, I'm an easy sweater. And it made me realize that, like, I think I'm gonna have this for the rest of my life. And I think it's getting worse and worse. I think as I continue to age, it gets a lot easier for me to smell bad. Like, it's harder for me to smell okay. I have to do more and more restrictions, I feel like, as I grow older. And the reason why I was speaking about the funeral or the passing of my uncle is because I also had the thought in my head that there were about like maybe 20 to 40 people attending the funeral. And I'm thinking to myself, when I die, would anybody attend my funeral? Like, a lot of these people that were in the funeral, they had some type of social connection with my uncle. But at my age, I really have little to no social connections. And I maybe, in the future I will get a couple of connections, but these connections are probably going to be just like internet connections. It's not going to be like typical connections you would get from being in a club or being in a church or being somewhere where you are physically next to somebody. And yeah, it just makes me think about how sort of bleak it is in how I estimate my life to be, because I can't even see anybody showing up to my funeral, unless I die early, of course my mother, grandmother, whatever. But eventually, my family, my uncles, the people I know that are older than me are gonna pass away before I do. And then when I'm like the final, when I hit, I don't know, maybe I hit 92, maybe I hit 80, who will show up to my funeral? I don't know. I think about that. Like, I think about the fact that if it gets worse and worse, if my estimation of as I grow older, it's going to get harder and harder to control or reduce the diet because your body's just not going to be able to break the food down as well as as it once was when you were 18 or something like that. I'm already like stressed out and shit now. What happens when I turn like 60, you know? What happens when I turn 80? Where even if I ate straight salads without any salad dressing, and I just ate that 100% every day, I'm still gonna give a stink. I don't know. I just thought about that. I didn't want to make it this long. Salute.